The greatest limitation in your life has never been a lack of opportunity, resources, or talent. It has been the invisible image you have accepted of yourself. Long before results appear in the physical world, they exist as mental patterns buried deep within the subconscious mind. Most people spend years trying to change their circumstances while leaving the internal blueprint untouched. They attempt to create abundance with a consciousness conditioned for limitation. They seek freedom while unconsciously identifying with struggle. And then they wonder why life seems to repeat the same experiences in different forms. Right now, there is a version of you that already exists beyond every current condition. That version is not waiting for permission. It is not waiting for luck. It is not waiting for the economy to improve or for someone else to recognize its value. It exists as a higher expression of your potential, quietly calling you toward expansion. The question is not whether that version exists. The question is whether you are willing to release the old identity that has kept it hidden. Close your eyes and your mind for a moment and consider something profound. Every result in your life is a reflection of an internal agreement, not an external circumstance, an internal agreement. The income you earn, the opportunities you attract, the confidence you display, the risks you avoid. They are all connected to beliefs that have become so familiar you no longer notice them. Yet the subconscious mind notices everything. It accepts repetition as truth. It acts upon whatever image is impressed upon it most deeply. Many people unknowingly carry beliefs that were never their own. Ideas inherited from parents, teachers, friends, and society become permanent residents in the subconscious. Be realistic. Don't expect too much. Success is for other people. These statements may appear harmless, but repeated often enough they become paradigms, and paradigms control behavior. What if the ceiling above your life was never real? What if it was simply a collection of unconscious assumptions you accepted years ago? Imagine how differently you would think, decide, and act if you knew with absolute certainty that abundance was your natural state. How many opportunities would suddenly become visible? How many fears would lose their power? Take a slow breath and recognize a deeper truth. Abundance is not merely money. Money is one expression of abundance. True abundance is a state of consciousness. It is the awareness that life is infinitely creative. It is the understanding that possibilities are greater than appearances. It is the ability to see opportunity where others see obstacles. It is the decision to align yourself with expansion rather than contraction. When your mind becomes conditioned to scarcity, you focus on what is missing. When your mind becomes conditioned to abundance, you focus on what can be created. The external world begins responding differently because you are responding differently. The frequency changes first, the results follow. There was a woman named Sarah who spent years believing she was destined for financial struggle. She worked hard, often harder than anyone around her. Yet every time progress appeared, something seemed to pull her backward. Unexpected expenses, missed opportunities, self-doubt. It felt like an endless cycle. One evening, after another disappointing setback, she asked herself a question she had never considered before. What if the problem isn't my effort? What if the problem is the image I hold of myself? That question changed everything. She began observing her thoughts. She noticed how often she described herself as unlucky. She noticed how uncomfortable she felt when imagining greater success. She noticed that deep down she had accepted an identity built around survival rather than prosperity. Without realizing it, she had been protecting a self-image that no longer served her. Day after day, she deliberately introduced a new image into her mind. She visualized herself as capable, valuable, and deserving of greater opportunities. She changed the conversations she had with herself. She stopped seeking evidence for limitation and started looking for evidence of possibility. The transformation was not immediate, but it was undeniable. Her confidence grew. Her decisions improved. She began pursuing opportunities she previously ignored. Within a few years, her income increased dramatically, but the financial change was not the real victory. The real victory was that she became someone different internally. Her world changed because her identity changed. This is the hidden principle most people overlook. You do not get what you want. You get what you are. Your self-image silently determines the boundaries of your experience. If you see yourself as small, life appears small. If you see yourself as powerful, Opportunities begin appearing where none seemed to exist before. The subconscious mind is always listening. Every thought carries emotional energy. Every emotion reinforces a pattern. This is why emotional mastery is essential. A person who constantly entertains fear trains the subconscious to expect limitation. A person who repeatedly experiences gratitude, confidence, and expectation trains the subconscious to seek expansion. Think about the frequency you are broadcasting right now. Are you mentally rehearsing failure or success? Are you preparing for disappointment or preparing for growth? The mind does not distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and physical reality as clearly as most people believe. What you consistently impress upon it becomes a blueprint for action. There is immense power in a decision, not a casual preference, a genuine decision. The moment you decide to become someone greater, you begin altering the trajectory of your life. Decisions shift energy, they redirect attention, they create momentum. Every extraordinary achievement begins with an internal commitment long before external evidence appears. Perhaps the most liberating realization is that your past does not define your future. Your conditioning may explain where you are, but it does not determine where you can go. Human potential is not fixed, it is expandable. The mind can be reconditioned, paradigms can be replaced, beliefs can be rewritten. Imagine releasing every story that says you are not enough. Imagine letting go of every inherited limitation. Imagine waking up each morning connected to a vision so compelling that doubt loses its grip. What would become possible? Who would you become? What impact would you create? The answer begins with awareness. It grows through repetition. It becomes reality through alignment. As your self-image expands, your actions evolve naturally. As your actions evolve, your results begin reflecting the person you are becoming. This is not wishful thinking. It is the law of mental transformation operating exactly as designed. You were never created to live confined by outdated beliefs. You were created with the ability to think, choose, create, and grow beyond every previous version of yourself. The abundance you seek is not somewhere outside of you waiting to be discovered. It is a dormant possibility within you waiting to be awakened. The moment you accept that truth, the moment you begin identifying with your highest potential rather than your current circumstances, a new reality starts forming. And perhaps the greatest realization of all is this: the life you desire is not asking you to become someone else. It is asking you to remember who you truly are beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear, and beneath every limitation you once accepted as fact. When you embrace that awareness, abundance ceases to be something you chase. It becomes something you embody. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to Proctor Mindset Lab and begin transforming your mind today. The moment you begin embodying abundance rather than pursuing it, an entirely different relationship with life emerges. You stop measuring your potential by current results. You stop allowing temporary conditions to dictate permanent conclusions. You begin understanding that circumstances are snapshots, not definitions. They reveal where your consciousness has been, not where it must remain. Most people underestimate the power of mental environment. They carefully choose where they live, what they eat, and how they spend their money, yet they rarely examine the thoughts they allow to occupy their minds each day. Every repeated thought is a seed. Every emotional reaction is water. Over time, those seeds grow into experiences that appear so natural they seem inevitable. But nothing about them is inevitable. They are cultivated. Consider how often people unconsciously defend the very limitations they wish to escape. They say they want greater abundance, yet immediately explain why it cannot happen. They desire confidence, yet continue identifying with insecurity. They dream of freedom, yet mentally rehearse reasons they are trapped. The subconscious mind receives mixed instructions and faithfully reproduces confusion. What if you stopped arguing for your limitations? What if every time the old paradigm attempted to remind you who you used to be, you calmly reminded it who you are becoming? That simple shift changes everything. The subconscious mind does not require force, it requires consistency. Many people become discouraged because transformation seems invisible at first. They expect dramatic changes after a few days of new thinking. Yet nature does not operate that way. A seed planted underground shows no visible evidence for a period of time. Growth is occurring, but it cannot yet be seen. The same is true of personal transformation. There is a quiet phase in every breakthrough where nothing appears to be happening. This is where most people quit. They mistake invisibility for absence. They assume that because results have not appeared, progress has not occurred. In reality, the deepest changes are often taking place beneath the surface. Neural pathways are reorganizing. Emotional patterns are shifting. Self-image is being reconstructed. Can you trust the process before the evidence arrives? That question separates those who merely wish for change from those who create it. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean before sunrise. The horizon appears dark. There is no visible indication that daylight is approaching. Yet you know the sun is coming. You do not panic because you cannot see it. You do not question whether morning exists. You trust a law greater than your immediate perception. The same principle applies to abundance. When you understand the laws governing thought, belief, and vibration, you stop demanding constant proof. You begin cooperating with the process. This cooperation requires emotional discipline, not suppression. Discipline, there is a difference. Suppression ignores emotions. Discipline directs them. A person who masters emotional energy understands that feelings are signals, not commands. Fear may appear, but it does not have to control behavior. Doubt may arise, but it does not have to determine decisions. Uncertainty may visit, but it does not have to become a permanent resident. The strongest individuals are not those who never experience negative emotions. They are those who refuse to surrender their vision because of temporary emotional weather. Think about the most significant achievements in human history. Every invention, discovery, business, movement, and masterpiece existed first as an idea. Before it became visible, someone had to hold an image that contradicted current reality. Someone had to believe before evidence existed. Someone had to remain faithful to possibility when circumstances suggested otherwise. That same creative capacity exists within you. You are not merely observing reality. You are participating in its creation. This realization carries enormous responsibility. If your thoughts influence your direction, then every day becomes an opportunity to consciously choose what you are becoming. The victim mindset loses its appeal because responsibility becomes empowering rather than burdensome. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this teaching me? How can I grow from this? What new identity is trying to emerge?" Growth often arrives disguised as discomfort. The old self resists expansion because familiarity feels safe. Even negative patterns can feel comfortable when they are known. This is why transformation sometimes feels uncomfortable. You are moving beyond psychological boundaries that have defined you for years. The discomfort is not evidence that you are failing. It is often evidence that you are expanding. When a person develops a larger vision for their life, they frequently encounter internal resistance. Old beliefs surface. Hidden fears become visible. Limiting assumptions reveal themselves. Many interpret this as a sign to retreat. In truth, it is an invitation to evolve. Every paradigm protects itself until it is replaced. The question is whether you will continue feeding the old identity or strengthen the new one. Imagine meeting yourself 5 years from now. Not the version created by default habits, but the version created by conscious design. How does that person think? How does that person speak? How does that person respond to challenges? What standards do they maintain? What beliefs guide their actions? That future self is not separated from you by time alone. It is separated by awareness. The more clearly you define that identity, the easier it becomes to align your present behavior with it. This is why purpose matters. Purpose is not merely a goal. It is a direction for consciousness. It provides meaning to effort and significance to growth. Without purpose, people become reactive. With purpose, they become intentional. An abundant life is not measured solely by financial success. It includes inner freedom. It includes clarity. It includes meaningful contribution. It includes the ability to remain centered regardless of external conditions. True wealth is the harmony between what you achieve and who you become while achieving it. As your awareness expands, you begin recognizing opportunities that were always present but previously invisible. Conversations take on new meaning, challenges reveal hidden lessons, setbacks become redirections rather than defeats. The world appears different because you are seeing it through a different lens. And perhaps this is one of the most extraordinary truths of all. The universe often responds not to what you say you want, but to what you genuinely expect. Expectation shapes perception. Perception influences action. Action creates outcomes. What begins as an internal assumption eventually becomes an external experience. The person you are becoming is already reaching toward you through every inspired idea, every intuitive nudge, every moment of dissatisfaction with limitation, and every vision of something greater. Those impulses are not accidents, they are invitations. They are reminders that your potential is far larger than your current circumstances suggest. The more you honor those invitations, the more your life begins moving in harmony with a deeper purpose, a higher frequency, and a greater expression of who you were always meant to be. As you move into that greater expression of yourself, something remarkable begins to happen. The goals that once seemed distant no longer feel impossible. They begin to feel natural, not because the objective has changed, but because your relationship with it has changed. What once appeared extraordinary now appears attainable. What once triggered intimidation now inspires action. This is the subtle power of a transformed self-image. It alters the meaning you assign to every possibility. Most people attempt to increase their results without increasing their level of consciousness. They want a larger harvest while continuing to plant the same seeds. Yet life responds to identity before it responds to ambition. The subconscious mind always seeks harmony between your self-concept and your circumstances. If success exceeds your self-image, you will unconsciously sabotage it. If abundance exceeds your internal comfort zone, you will find ways to push it away. This is why inner growth must precede sustained outer growth. There is a profound difference between acquiring something and becoming someone. Acquiring is temporary. Becoming is transformational. A person may acquire money and lose it. They may acquire status and watch it disappear. They may acquire opportunities and fail to capitalize on them. But when someone becomes the type of person who naturally creates value, recognizes possibilities, and acts with confidence, their success becomes repeatable. It is rooted in identity rather than circumstance. Think about how many decisions you make automatically each day. The majority are not conscious choices. They are habitual responses generated by existing paradigms. The subconscious mind is constantly operating beneath awareness, influencing perception, emotion, and behavior. This is why true transformation cannot rely solely on willpower. Willpower is valuable, but it is limited. Paradigms are powerful because they operate automatically. To create lasting change, you must impress new ideas upon the subconscious repeatedly until they become familiar. What feels unnatural today can become effortless tomorrow. Confidence can become natural. Discipline can become natural. Prosperity can become natural. But first, the mind must accept them as part of your identity. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to attract opportunities wherever they go? Others encounter the same environment and see nothing. The difference is rarely external. It is perceptual. One person has conditioned their mind to recognize possibilities. The other has conditioned their mind to notice limitations. Your awareness functions like a filter. Whatever you consistently expect, you become more likely to notice. This is why gratitude is far more powerful than most people realize. Gratitude is not merely a pleasant emotion. It is a shift in perception. It trains the mind to recognize value, possibility, and abundance. A grateful mind sees resources where others see scarcity. It sees lessons where others see obstacles. It sees potential where others see barriers. When gratitude combines with vision, a powerful transformation occurs. You become appreciative of the present while remaining inspired by the future. You stop living in dissatisfaction. You stop postponing happiness until some distant achievement arrives. Instead, you create an emotional state that supports growth. This emotional state matters because emotions are carriers of energy. Every thought carries a frequency. Every emotion amplifies that frequency. The emotional tone you maintain throughout the day influences how you interpret experiences, how you communicate with others, and how you respond to challenges. A person operating from fear perceives threats everywhere. A person operating from confidence perceives opportunities everywhere. The world appears different because consciousness has changed. Many people spend years trying to control external events while neglecting the internal source from which their reactions emerge. Yet mastery begins within. The quality of your life is deeply connected to the quality of your awareness. When awareness expands, options expand. When options expand, possibilities multiply. Imagine what would happen if you stopped viewing obstacles as interruptions and started viewing them as training. Every challenge would become meaningful. Every setback would contain instruction. Every disappointment would carry information. Instead of asking why life is difficult, you would ask what strength is being developed. This perspective transforms adversity, not because adversity disappears, but because its purpose becomes visible. The individuals who create extraordinary lives are not protected from difficulty. They simply interpret difficulty differently. They understand that growth requires expansion, and expansion often requires discomfort. Just as a muscle develops through resistance, character develops through challenge. Confidence develops through action. Wisdom develops through experience. There is an intelligence within you that knows how to grow. It knows how to adapt. It knows how to evolve. The problem is not a lack of potential. The problem is that many people have been conditioned to doubt their own capacity. They have spent years seeking permission from circumstances, waiting for certainty, waiting for guarantees, yet certainty rarely arrives before commitment. More often, certainty is the result of commitment. You decide first, then clarity follows. This principle applies to every meaningful transformation. The person who waits until they feel completely ready may wait forever. Growth begins when you act in alignment with a larger vision despite temporary uncertainty. Every courageous decision sends a message to the subconscious mind. I am no longer defined by the limitations of my past. That message matters. The subconscious is always listening. Every action either reinforces an old identity or strengthens a new one. Each time you honor your vision, you build evidence for your future self. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, self-trust deepens. Each time you choose growth over comfort, your paradigm begins shifting. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, you become someone capable of things that once seemed beyond reach. And then one day you look back, you realize the fears that once controlled you no longer have authority. The doubts that once silenced you no longer dictate your decisions. The limitations that once appeared permanent have dissolved. You see that the transformation was never about changing your circumstances first. It was about changing the consciousness from which those circumstances emerged. This realization marks a turning point. You stop seeing yourself as a product of conditions and begin recognizing yourself as a creative force within them. You understand that your future is not something waiting to happen. It is something being shaped by your thoughts, beliefs, decisions, and actions every single day. The abundance you seek continues to reveal itself as an inside-out experience. The more deeply you align with your highest vision, the more naturally life begins reflecting that alignment. Opportunities arrive, relationships evolve, confidence strengthens, purpose becomes clearer, not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. And as this awareness deepens, you begin to understand a truth that few people fully grasp. The greatest wealth you can ever possess is the ability to consciously direct your own mind. Once you develop that ability, you are no longer at the mercy of circumstance. You become the architect of your perception, the guardian of your self-image, and the deliberate creator of the life you choose to build. When you become the deliberate creator of your life, the search for external validation begins to lose its grip. You no longer need every person to understand your vision. You no longer require unanimous approval before taking action. There is a quiet confidence that emerges when your identity is anchored internally rather than externally. It is not arrogance, it is certainty. The certainty that your potential is not determined by opinions, predictions, or appearances. Many people spend years unknowingly borrowing their self-worth from circumstances. When conditions improve, they feel valuable. When conditions decline, they question themselves. Their confidence rises and falls with outcomes. Yet genuine self-mastery begins when you understand that your value is inherent, not earned. Results can reflect growth, but they do not create worth. Worth is the foundation from which growth occurs. This distinction changes everything. A person who believes they must prove their value often operates from fear. They become attached to outcomes because they confuse achievement with identity. But a person who recognizes their inherent worth approaches life differently. They pursue excellence without desperation. They embrace ambition without anxiety. They act from inspiration rather than insecurity. Imagine the freedom of knowing that a temporary setback says nothing about your potential. Imagine the power of understanding that failure is an event, not an identity. How differently would you move through life? The truth is that every successful individual has encountered moments that appeared discouraging. Dreams delayed, plans disrupted, expectations unmet, yet the people who ultimately create extraordinary results understand something others miss. They do not interpret temporary experiences as permanent truths. They remain committed to the larger vision. Commitment is often misunderstood. Many assume commitment means feeling motivated every day. It does not. Commitment means remaining aligned with your vision even when emotions fluctuate. Motivation comes and goes. Inspiration rises and falls. But commitment endures. This endurance creates momentum. Momentum creates evidence. Evidence strengthens belief. And strengthened belief fuels even greater action. A powerful cycle begins to form. What started as a possibility gradually becomes a conviction. At that point, the future starts pulling you forward more strongly than the past pulls you backward. That is a profound shift. Most people are unconsciously driven by memory. Their expectations are shaped by previous experiences. They assume tomorrow will resemble yesterday because yesterday is familiar. But the individual who consciously creates a new self-image begins living from vision rather than memory. Their future becomes more influential than their past. Think about the implications of that. When vision becomes stronger than memory, limitation loses authority. The old stories begin to fade. The old labels lose significance. The old fears lose credibility. A completely different psychological environment emerges. This environment is fertile ground for abundance because abundance thrives where possibility is welcomed. Scarcity consciousness focuses on what has been lost. Abundance consciousness focuses on what can be created. Scarcity asks, what if things go wrong? Abundance asks, what if things go right? Scarcity contracts, abundance expands. Neither perspective changes reality instantly, but each perspective changes the person experiencing reality, and that changes everything. One of the most overlooked truths about personal transformation is that awareness itself is creative. The moment you become aware of a limiting belief, you create separation from it. Before awareness, the belief controls behavior automatically. After awareness, a choice becomes available. You can continue reinforcing the belief, or you can replace it. This is why conscious observation is so powerful. Observe your thoughts without judgment. Observe your emotional patterns without resistance. Observe your reactions without condemnation. The goal is not self-criticism. The goal is self-understanding. Once you understand a pattern, you gain the ability to transform it. Many people attempt to change themselves through force. They fight their fears. They battle their doubts, they criticize their weaknesses. Yet transformation often occurs more effectively through awareness than through struggle. Light naturally dissolves darkness. Understanding naturally dissolves confusion. The more clearly you see yourself, the more clearly you can direct yourself. This clarity leads to another important realization. Growth is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming increasingly aligned with your highest potential. Perfection is an impossible standard. Expansion is a living process. Every day presents another opportunity to learn, adjust, refine, and evolve. The person you are becoming is not finished, nor should they be. Life itself is growth. The moment growth stops, stagnation begins. This is why purpose remains so important throughout every stage of success. Without purpose, achievement can feel empty. Goals are reached, yet fulfillment remains distant. The reason is simple. Human beings are designed not only to achieve, but also to contribute, create, and expand. Purpose connects personal success to something larger than personal gain. When your actions align with purpose, energy increases. When energy increases, persistence strengthens. When persistence strengthens, possibilities multiply. Life begins flowing with greater coherence. You start noticing connections that once seemed random. You recognize opportunities hidden within challenges. You discover strengths that remain dormant for years. And perhaps most importantly, you develop trust. Not blind optimism, not wishful thinking. Trust. Trust in your ability to adapt. Trust in your ability to learn. Trust in your ability to create new results. Trust in your capacity for growth. This trust becomes one of the most valuable assets you will ever possess because it remains available regardless of circumstances. Markets may change, conditions may shift, plans may require adjustment, yet self-trust allows you to move forward without becoming paralyzed by uncertainty. The future will always contain unknowns, but unknowns are not enemies. They are spaces where possibility lives. Every meaningful opportunity once existed as an unknown. Every breakthrough emerged from uncertainty. Every transformation began before there was proof. The individuals who create remarkable lives understand this. They do not wait for every answer before moving forward. They take the next step available, then the next, then the next. Progress unfolds through movement, not hesitation. As your paradigm continues evolving, you begin to realize that abundance is far more expansive than you once imagined. It is abundance of ideas, abundance of creativity, abundance of energy, abundance of meaningful relationships, abundance of opportunity, abundance of contribution. Financial prosperity becomes one expression of a much larger state of being. And in that state, something beautiful occurs. Life stops feeling like a constant struggle for survival and starts feeling like an unfolding journey of creation. You become less focused on protecting limitations and more focused on expressing potential. Less concerned with what is lacking and more attentive to what is possible. Less identified with who you were and more connected to who you are becoming. The journey continues not because you are incomplete, but because your potential is endless. Each new level of awareness reveals another horizon. Each horizon reveals another possibility. And with every step forward, you discover that the power you once searched for in the outside world has been quietly waiting within you all along.
One of the most misunderstood ideas in personal development is the belief that people consciously create their lives through willpower alone. Most people assume that if they simply try harder, work longer, or become more disciplined, everything will change. Yet many intelligent, capable people continue repeating the same patterns for years despite their best efforts. The reason is simple. Behavior is not primarily controlled by conscious thinking. It is controlled by subconscious programming. Think of the conscious mind as the captain of a ship and the subconscious mind as the engine room. The captain gives directions, but the engine room provides the power. If the captain wants to go north, but the engine is programmed to move south, progress becomes difficult and frustrating. This is exactly what happens when someone consciously wants success but subconsciously expects struggle. The subconscious mind is not logical. It does not evaluate whether a belief is true or false. It simply accepts what has been repeated often enough with enough emotional intensity. Over time, those repeated ideas become automatic programs. Consider a simple example. Imagine a child who repeatedly hears phrases such as "money is hard to earn," "rich people are greedy," or "people like us never get ahead." The child may not consciously analyze these statements. However, the subconscious mind records them. Years later, that person may sincerely want financial success while unconsciously feeling uncomfortable around wealth. The conscious goal and subconscious program are moving in opposite directions. This creates internal conflict. Many people experience this conflict without realizing it. They set goals, become excited, and then somehow lose momentum. They procrastinate. They hesitate. They make excuses. They become distracted. They assume they lack discipline when the real issue is often deeper. The subconscious mind is attempting to remain consistent with the person's existing self-image. Self-image is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. It is the collection of beliefs a person holds about who they are. It answers questions such as, what am I capable of? What do I deserve? What kind of person am I? Most people focus on changing circumstances while ignoring self-image. Imagine a thermostat set to 68 degrees. If the temperature rises to 75 degrees, the thermostat activates cooling systems until the temperature returns to its programmed setting. If the temperature falls too low, the heating system activates. Self-image functions in a similar way. A person with a self-image that says, I am not confident, may temporarily act confidently in certain situations. However, unless the self-image changes, they often return to familiar patterns. The subconscious mind continually seeks consistency. This explains why lasting change requires more than temporary motivation. Motivation can inspire action for a short period. Identity creates lasting behavior. When someone says, I am trying to exercise, they are approaching behavior from the outside. When someone says, I am a healthy person, they are approaching behavior from identity. The second statement carries far more power, because behavior naturally follows identity. The same principle applies to money, relationships, leadership, creativity, and personal growth. If someone identifies as a person who struggles financially, they may unknowingly make decisions that reinforce that identity. They may avoid opportunities. They may undervalue their skills. They may fear asking for higher compensation. Their actions appear logical on the surface, but underneath them is an identity trying to remain consistent. This is why paradigms are so important. A paradigm is a collection of habits, beliefs, and conditioned patterns stored in the subconscious mind. It acts like an invisible operating system running in the background of daily life. Most people never consciously choose their paradigm. It is inherited. Parents influence it. Schools influence it. Friends influence it. Culture influences it. Repeated experiences influence it. Over time, these influences create a mental framework that shapes perception. Two people can experience the same event and interpret it completely differently because they are operating from different paradigms. One person sees opportunity, another sees risk. One sees possibility, another sees limitation. The event is the same, the paradigm is different. This is why awareness is the first step toward transformation. Before you can change a pattern, you must see it. A practical exercise is to observe your automatic reactions throughout the day. Notice your thoughts when you see someone successful. Notice your thoughts when facing uncertainty. Notice your thoughts when considering a bigger goal. Do you feel excited or uncomfortable? Do you feel possibility or doubt? Your automatic reactions often reveal hidden programming. Many limiting beliefs remain invisible because they feel normal. For example, a person might constantly say, I'm just not good with money. At first glance, this appears harmless. In reality, it is a self-description. The subconscious mind hears that statement repeatedly and treats it as an instruction. The individual then behaves accordingly. The first step in reprogramming is interrupting these automatic descriptions. Instead of saying, I'm bad with money, someone might begin saying, I'm learning how to manage money wisely. This may seem like a small change, but it shifts identity from limitation to growth. The next step is repetition. The subconscious mind learns through repetition and emotion. This is why affirmations alone often fail. If someone repeats words mechanically without emotional involvement, the impact is limited. However, When a new belief is repeated consistently while being connected to strong emotion, visualization, and action, the subconscious becomes more receptive. This is why daily mental rehearsal can be so effective. Spend a few minutes each day imagining yourself as the person you want to become, not merely achieving a goal, being that person. How do they think? How do they speak? How do they make decisions? How do they respond to challenges? The goal is to familiarize the subconscious mind with a new identity. At the same time, support that identity with small actions. Many people attempt massive transformation overnight and become discouraged. Real change usually happens gradually. If you want to become more confident, start by speaking up slightly more than usual. If you want to become financially responsible, begin tracking expenses consistently. If you want to become disciplined, keep one small promise to yourself each day. These actions may appear insignificant, but they serve an important purpose. They provide evidence. The subconscious mind responds strongly to evidence. Each small action tells your mind, "This is who I am now." Over time, enough evidence accumulates to support a new self-image. Eventually, behaviors that once required effort begin feeling natural. This is the true goal of subconscious reprogramming. It is not forcing yourself to act differently forever. It is becoming someone for whom new behaviors feel normal. When identity changes, decisions change. When decisions change, actions change. When actions change, results change. Most people try to change results directly. The deeper approach is to change identity first. Results then become a natural reflection of who you believe yourself to be. The most powerful realization is that you are not permanently defined by your current programming. The beliefs you have today were learned. What is learned can be unlearned. What is conditioned can be reconditioned. The subconscious mind is not fixed. It is adaptable. The moment you begin consciously directing your thoughts, observing your patterns, and acting in alignment with a greater vision of yourself, you begin creating a new paradigm. And as that paradigm changes, the life you experience begins to change with it.